Hello, everyone. I am Interim Dean of Student Academic Engagement. I am Janice Johnson Dias. I'm also an associate professor in the Department of Sociology. I've been at John Jay since 2007. I mostly study and spend my time thinking about issues of inequality. I also run a nonprofit called the Grassroots Community Foundation, and our work there sits at the intersection of public health and social justice. And today's conversation is informed by those kinds of issues, right? Here we are at John Jay College, a largely Hispanic serving institution, minority serving institution. And you are both studying issues of justice, you are being educated for justice, and there are several processes that you have to undergo that at times feels unjust. And it's unjust because sometimes you don't have the experience or knowledge, and your families don't either. And what we're trying to do here at John Jay is to interrupt all of the inequities at multiple levels and give you an opportunity to create a pathway that is good for you as an individual, good for your families, good for your communities, and good for the world. And to do that, you have to interact with the labor force. You have to get jobs. America is a good capitalist society. And in order to be successful here, in order to be healthy here, you need jobs, you need employment. And too often, many of us think that doing good, working means that we have to get jobs in the public sector alone, or we have to take a vow of poverty. And that is not the case. For the past day and a half, we've been engaged talking with people from the private sector, people who make money and still want to do good in the world. And some of those people you're going to hear from today. You've heard from them this morning, you can hear from them again in this afternoon, and you can have your resume reviewed by them. Today we have 3 industry leaders whose job it's been to hire and cultivate people into the workforce, into the private sector. They have knowledge and experience that can be helpful to all of us at every stage of our career. But they're particularly important to us, the junior scholars, which is who you are, as you are trying to make entree into this world. And we want them to give us the inside scoop, because we know that our students here at John Jay, if you have the resources that you need, you will be extremely successful. That you can go out and be fierce advocates for justice when you have the tools in your toolkit to do so. So that's why you have these 3 lovely people here today. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and give their titles, because you need to know who they are so you can join them on LinkedIn and ask them for jobs and money and internships. Okay? All right?
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Is it afternoon yet?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I'm like, we've been in a room all day. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy to be with you today. My name is Patricia Griffiths. I am the Senior Director of Talent Attraction at Vox Media, which is a leading modern media company. We have a number of well-established editorial brands, which you may be aware of, such as New York Magazine, which has The Strategist, The Cut, we have Vox.com, we have Vox Media Podcast Network, which has a lot of popular, I know you have a podcast, networks on there too as well. I have been within the recruiting space my entire career. So, I won't tell you how long that has been, but
1900.
Right? I hate that term now. I hate that. Don't do that to us. So I've definitely seen over the course of my entire career how recruiting has changed and how we look at talent and how that has changed and how that has morphed. So I'm happy to provide insights on kind of what that looks like. I've been at Vox for 3 years, a little over 3 years, and it's the best company that I've ever worked for, in large part because of the culture, its commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of what I do with my the rest of my team is we're in charge charge of ensuring that there's representation within our talent pipelines. So that means actively engaging, with strategic partnerships, actively going out there, dealing with universities that have diverse representation amongst their ranks. So this is a passion of mine. Of course, I'm a person of color, so I'm part of that community too as well. And anything that I can do post this conversation, happy to support and help out.
That's internship jobs.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Powell. I'm the Associate Director of Worldwide Operations at Bristol Myers Squibb. Bristol Myers Squibb is a pharmaceutical company based out of Princeton, New Jersey. We have products in oncology, cardiovascular disease, a number of different products that cure or help with rare diseases. My particular role, I'm like the chief of staff for the chief commercialization officer, the person that's in charge of getting the products into people. In particularly, I do a lot of things, but not anything too deep to a certain degree. But my biggest proponent in becoming the HR space, I'm not an HR professional, I'm not that at all, but I was in charge of our rotational program, Business Insights and Analytics rotational program, in which I was in charge of interviewing and bringing in people as a part of that program. I'm also in charge of creating pipelines with different universities for bringing in interns and full-time roles for people such as yourself into the organization, specifically Washington University in St. Louis, which is my alma mater. Again, we're here in recruiting and making sure that we bring in people like you for the next generation of leaders at Bristol Myers Squibb, and look forward to giving you some tips and tricks of how to not only work with us, but work for any Fortune 500 company. Oh, yeah. Barris has a QR code, and he's the man of the internship, so he's a perfect person to go to.
That's the blonde guy.
The very stylish blonde guy. It makes me look terrible. But he looks
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ariel Knight, and I am an HR leader at MasterCard. So how many of you have heard of, hopefully you all have some type of credit card, or maybe you have an iPhone, or maybe you have an Android. No shade to them, but if you've ever used your iPhone to pay for something like Apple Pay, that's MasterCard actually came up with that technology. So that's what MasterCard does. I don't really do all that, but I do hire people. I lead a lot of our talent initiatives across MasterCard. So that's anything that touches kind of the life cycle of an employee or a candidate coming into our company. So that means kind of, we're attracting, we're kind of dating you and trying to get to know you from coming into the company, and we're, kind of like maybe we're just getting to know each other. We're onboarding you, getting to know the organization, all the way through kind of your entire, like your promotion, your entire life cycle throughout the company. So I lead a lot of those talent initiatives across MasterCard, and I'm super excited to be here with all of you today to tell you more about MasterCard and share some tips and tricks as well.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So a part of why I'm excited about it is that often you hear about HR directors. You might go to the career development office and they're like, this is what HR directors are looking for. And you're like, well, who are these people, these HR directors, these talent recruitment people, these people who are head internships? This is some of them. And some of them look like us. And it is really important to know that, because it doesn't always mean that all of them look like us. And it doesn't mean that if they look like us, they're necessarily on our side. But these folks here are on our side, right? And they are here, again, to give you tools so you can have in your toolkit. So I want to begin with the first question. As you reflect on your own leadership, your trajectory, and your time in talent acquisition, DEI, or human resources, what inspiring advice do you have to share with our exceptional students as they seek to cement their place in the world and as they seek to go out and find jobs?
Well, definitely I'll say there's the premium on talent these days, and organizations will do just about anything to get amazing talent in the door, because how do you continue to maintain your competitiveness as an organization is by having great people and great teams that help to kind of shepherd the big ideas from start to finish. So I will say, like, when I think even about like what 2021 looked like, which was insane in terms of recruiting, like everybody was hiring. everybody was looking for talent. Like it was like beg, borrow, steal, and to make a connection. So we were very busy in my department. What I love about where we're at today is we are a strategic function now. Before, like, let's say maybe 10, 12 years ago, recruiting was not really considered a strategic function. It was considered very reactive. You had to really fight for resources in order to be effective and efficient at what you did. So the dollars weren't necessarily coming to ensure that we were able to do our best work. So that was a huge change that I've seen.
Yo, I want you to hear that. Like, we couldn't pay y'all a lot, right? And we couldn't support your development.
That's right. That's right. So, but now I get everything that I asked for because the premium is on talent, because people understand the value of having good people on your teams. And the reality is that as, industries are changing and morphing, consolidating, we need people who are nimble enough to be able to kind of traverse those changes and be able to kind of shepherd those in. So I think it's an exciting time also too for people with non-traditional backgrounds. So a lot of the work that I do right now with my team is we're training our managers on kind of thinking thoughtfully about what success looks like in a candidate, right? Because the reality is 30 years ago, we didn't do the work or look into the data to see that the talent shortages were coming. So we have to really think broadly about like, what does good look like? I've been in recruiting, like I said, exactly. I've been in recruiting my entire career, and good looks different today, right, than it did before, where if you didn't have a similar background to somebody, and that's where the whole networking and community was a blocker of talent, pipelines for people of color, to be quite honest with you, or even women.
I can translate that for y'all. Good used to only look white.
Yes. So you couldn't get in because you didn't know the person who could connect you to the hiring manager who could get you the interview, right? So, and I worked in industries that were very incestuous in that, you moved groups around. So if you weren't a part of that team, you weren't getting that job because I wasn't actively recruiting for it. They were saying, Patricia, this is who we want to hire. Okay, make it happen, right? Send the application, bring them on board. So I'm excited about like where talent is today and the way that we train our managers to think thoughtfully about like how people can do their jobs. So I'm a recruiter. Everybody knows what we do. We hire people. But do I necessarily only have to hire, if I'm hiring for my team, do I necessarily only have to hire people who've done recruiting experience? No. That could look like a casting director, right? That person's aesthetically doing the same job, right? Their job is to go out and find talent to work on a production. They may not have had the skill sets in terms of like experience on specific systems that we use, but I can train that, right? Like that's easy, right? The hard stuff is, can you actually competently do this job with the skill sets that you bring to the table? And there might be some gaps on my team that you're going to bring to the bench strength that I didn't have if I kind of stuck to this formulaic box of what I think good looks like. So I think it's a great time for you to think thoughtfully about what a career might look like. Don't box yourself in because you can do anything that you want, and there's people out there and roads for you to like travel down to ensure that you get what you need to kind of kickstart your career. And don't be afraid to reinvent yourself every couple of years because it's all possible. It's your life. You can chart it. Sorry, I was so long-winded.
That's all right. You can be blonde is also another translation.
A ton of great advice too. Hard to compete with that. I guess two things of more encouragement. I think now is the best time to kind of enter into the work world. Someone with a D&I background. When I was coming in, I was the only person in the room. There were really no programs to bring in people that were Black, Brown, LGBTQ+, and more likely they only bring in because of a particular quota. But now organizations are spending tens of millions of dollars when it comes to procurement for outside vendors or to bring in full-time people or interns such as yourself into organizations. So it's a great time to really like have an opportunity to succeed. Even at Bristol Myers Squibb, where we started a program called Tomorrow's Innovators Programs, which we're working with HBCU organizations and really creating a pipeline of success for people from internships to full-time and throughout their time at Bristol Myers Squibb too. And that happened in 2020, and we definitely seen the fruits of that labor come to fruition now. And the second part of advice I would ask is like follow your passions. I think if you have a passion for something and it just oozes off of your body, your sweat, your blood, and your tears, like people will see that. The HR recruiters here will see that, and they want to bring you in because you might not have all the hard skills, but we can mold those hard skills with that passion and energy to be a very much a successful person within the organization within probably a few months for a few years. So those are two things I think that would be very encouraging going to the job market for you guys.
I have nothing further to add. No, I just those are really good comments and questions, or just comments and thoughts, right? I think where you are in your lives and in your career journey, right, is I would just echo what my fellow panelists said, right? It's all about your passions. And I think one of the things that I think about when I think about my career journey is that I learned and pivoted a lot throughout my career journey. When I was sitting in your seats, I actually thought that I wanted to be a doctor. And now I'm an HR professional. So, wow, look how times have changed. Yeah, so I took like chemistry 101 or biology 101, and I was like, this isn't for me. This is just not my calling in life. No, these numbers, the math wasn't mathing. So I decided to pivot. And then I went into engineering, believe it or not. And that also didn't work out either for me. As you can see, I'm in HR, like I said. So just continue to and again, you don't have to know what you want to be when you grow up right now today. These things change, and people, I know so many people, and we recruit a lot of people that actually do want to have a career change. One of the big things that the pandemic kind of taught us as HR professionals is that people spent time during the pandemic not only figuring out how to live and survive in this new way of living, but they also got new skills. And they said, maybe I'm gonna go back to school and get another degree. Maybe I'm going to take some additional classes to learn a new skill, to just keep their skills sharper, right? I know people that were HR people, and they decided they wanted to be software engineers, and they're now coding, right? And I think that's so amazing that you don't have to stay in the same thing for the rest of your life. Because sometimes you feel like, am I gonna stay still interested in this? Am I gonna get bored with it? You might continue to master your craft, or you might pivot, and that's okay too. So now, the advice is I'm not telling you to go and do everything. Pick something, that you can that you feel passionate about today, but also give yourself grace to pivot if you 3 to 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you decide to change your mind and you want to pursue something different in your career and in your journey. Okay?
I'm going to ask you to hold that mic because I'd like to ask you a follow-up. In your career, what have been some of the biggest successes and challenges, both personally and professionally?
Yeah, so I think some challenges that I've had to overcome, I'll give a little bit of a personal story. Over the last 3 years, like with the pandemic, right? So in my role as an HR professional, I at one point in time during the pandemic, I felt like I was an epidemiologist, which is basically the person that like diagnoses, diseases and things like that. If you heard of like Dr. Fauci on the news and things like that, it's basically what he does. And I never was trained to be an epidemiologist, but I felt like I was trying to coach people how to diagnose COVID. And I was like, I don't know how to do this, guys. I really don't. Like, if you're sick, just don't come to work. Please don't do that. Like, just don't do that. But it's like these challenges of like, you just keep trying to like sharpen yourself. So I think the challenge for me has been really dealing with like the pandemic and the struggles of being in the pandemic, but also dealing with like the mental health pieces that come with being in the pandemic, right? So we all feel like, we're out of that, it's like things are better now, but there's still some mental health challenges that exist with our employees, with candidates that we're recruiting, with everyone that we're, even in our personal lives, right? Me personally, or family members that I'm dealing with as well. So I feel like that's a challenge that as HR professionals, we really have to think about, and we're still trying to figure out the best way to combat that and give our employees and give our teams and give our communities those resources to help them, to really help, to come across that. I think one of the successes that I'm most proud of, when I think about MasterCard, and I promise I'm not doing a heavy spiel or a heavy sell on MasterCard, but
unless you're offering a heavy
unless I have a job to offer, but I really, what I love about MasterCard is that every day since I've joined, and I've been there 3 years, and I joined like right at the beginning of the pandemic, so wow, didn't see that one coming, but I have laughed every day since I've been at MasterCard. Every day I laugh. And it's there. I know that sounds silly, but like being able to laugh and have like a smile on your face and just to have fun with your job and your coworkers is something that is truly priceless for me. Again, that's a little cheesy because that's our hashtag. It's our hashtag. But
When we do a clip of you,
I know.
it's gonna be right.
Can you just, yeah. But so that's one of my, what I feel like is one of my biggest successes. Like, you know, I've worked in a number of different industries across my career. You know, I've worked at consumer goods company. I don't, you know, if you've ever had Pepsi, I used to work at Pepsi before, and like we made chips and soda. And then I went from that to working at a company that does like Apple Pay and, you know, has credit cards and things like that. So, but today, like 3 years into this company, I really do look back and I say, no, every day I've been able to laugh, and that's, it's a success for me. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
I hope BMS has a tagline.
Not that good. No, not good.
So tell us a little bit about your biggest successes and challenges.
Yeah. So actually, I'll go with the challenge or failure. So my actually biggest failure happened literally 10 blocks away from here. I worked for it's still reminiscent of coming. So I worked in my first job out of undergrad, like most of you will be, was for National Basketball Association. It was a dream job. I was passionate about sports. Like it was the right job for me. And I was there for a whole entire year and I thought everything was going good. But if you guys don't remember, it was 2011 NBA lockout had happened, and literally like the league was closed for like 4 or 5 months, and they laid off a lot of people, about 10% of the staff, and unfortunately, I was first one in, first one out. So, you know, I got like the pink slip or whatever, like a few blocks away. So, what am I going to do? I can't afford my rent. You know, I don't know if I can live in New York City anymore. What's going on? This is my first job out of undergrad. So I'm like, well, I thought everything's supposed to be perfect. But you realize, when life gives you, you can't basically get punched in the face. You know, you got to kind of go with the flow to a certain degree. But
Is that actually how the phrase goes?
yeah. or like Mike Tyson's like, you know, everyone has a plan to get punched in the face. Yeah. So I got punched in the face 2 times. I literally was in a sublet apartment in Astoria with like hardly any money and like unemployment insurance. So again,
Did you have tuna?
I had tuna and I had peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So I was able to survive. And my parents were good spirits, but I can't really help you out that much. Mm-hmm. But eventually I was able to find a freelance job at a company called In Demand. And I was able to grow my career there for 5 years and eventually be on the career track getting my MBA and working for Bristol Myers Squibb. So honestly, when a door closes, a window opens. That you might think that this might be a great job at an undergrad, but you realize that maybe you weren't put in the right place in the right time, and something even better will happen down the line. So again, that's my biggest failure or challenge in my career. But the biggest success, I think, is me being at Bristol Myers Squibb. I was able to start my own podcast called the Bold Innovators Podcast, in which I interview leaders in our organization, Black and Brown, about what it is to be a person of color within the organization, what it takes to be a leader, and like what are tips and tricks for people to kind of take their career to the next level. And it's gotten great exposure. It's been around for 2 seasons. It's opened up ways of opportunities for me doing speaking engagements with people in front of you, went to South by Southwest, and it's really blowing into a bigger opportunity of podcasting, not only in Bristol Myers Squibb, but in pharma in general. So that's kind of like my biggest success. Thank you, Bristol Myers Squibb.
So we're gonna have to come up with the phase. Like when you get punched in the face and kicked, then you get a good job.
Exactly. That's how it works.
Good job, Kirsty. In terms of challenges, I definitely had a huge challenge when I accepted a position within an organization which was the epitome of the toxic work environment before I even really knew what that was. And I mean, it was detrimental to my health. Like my hair was falling out. Like I couldn't sleep at night. I lost like a bunch of weight.
What, I mean, are we gonna call that a failure though?
Right. Yes, because I am Jamaican and we prefer to be round. Exactly. So I kept trying to, what I learned from this is I kept trying to fix something that actually was bigger than me and that I was not fixable. And at the time, the world of work has definitely changed. At the time, definitely, you didn't want to be a job hopper or seen as a job hopper. So it was like, you got to stay here, stick it out for a certain amount of time. And then, and I love my boss. That was the conflicting part. I love my boss. And we thought that the two of us, we could tackle the world. And I was like, girl, it's more than just us. It's more than just us. Like, legitimately. I was like, I am trying everything. But sometimes when you're working within a system of people who are immovable and who have been like in a company for X amount of years and they're just adverse to change. And what I learned from that is it's okay to punch it in and call it, a day, and to be okay with prioritizing. Yeah, well, yeah, you got to prioritize, your health and wellness. I think that's important. I think a lot of people really got that during the pandemic. I think a lot of people came out of that forever changed about what balance needs to look like for them in order to be happy. So I'm really happy about that. But I learned a lot about myself and just like really prioritizing me in that. So even though it was a huge challenge and I would not wish it on anybody, I learned a lot and I share that with other people. Whenever I hear something that sounds toxic, I'm like, okay, let's talk about your exit strategy because this can't be fixed. My biggest success, I would say, is because I'm in HR, which why I love the field is you can do this anywhere. I can recruit anywhere. Like I can go to, and I've been, if you've looked at my LinkedIn, I've been everywhere. And I think I've been able to successfully traverse different industries because I continue to hone in on what I know, right? So I know talent. I might have to learn where these new people are, right? But I aesthetically know how to do my job. So I could be successful wherever you plant me. And I think my biggest success was at this toxic company where I came in and decided that because I was new, there was less time that they had to hate me at that point. So that if I came in and decided to fix some stuff and without anyone thinking that I had a dog in this race or some type of agenda, and I came in and said, hey, I don't know anything, but I want to learn and then I want to fix it because you're actually impacting my job at the end of the day. Let's have at it. And being able to be in a position where our CFO, who was pretty much an ogre, was like, wow, that was the most intelligent conversation we've ever had on that topic. I really appreciate you. I hope you'll be successful. Good luck. Right. Good luck. But that to me is a badge of honor that I was able to actually like in a really rough place to live, if you will, I was able to still do good work, and then be able to say, you know what, time to move on and take what I learned and find better pastures. And I did. And I'm glad that I did. And if I had to go through it to come out where I am today with Vox, it was worth it. It was all worth it.
All right. So I'll ask you to hold on to the
Okay.
mic. So my final question to each of you is, in thinking about your role as a recruiter, especially for early career professionals, can you identify 2 or 3 skills, tangible skills that you think early career professionals really need? And has there been a common thread that they have not had that you want to encourage our students to also have?
Okay, so I polled my campus recruiters for this because I'm a little far
You knew I was
away.
gonna ask.
Right. I'm a little far away from the campus recruiting scene, so I had them kind of weigh in and say, well, what are you seeing right now? First and foremost, I would absolutely champion all of you to ensure that you get some internship fellowship experience. You need that on your resume.
Are there any advice?
There are fellowships coming up. So definitely be on the lookout for those because that's going to give you the exposure that you need to get the experience that you'll need to kind of have a successful launch. You'll make contacts, build out your network, and kind of move on from there. Zavaris and I, at the start of our kind of college career, we both joined an organization known as Inroads. And Inroads, who is still around, so please look into them. Basically, their mantra, and still is really they wanted to help diversify corporate America. And so they would go out to various different campuses and go find the talent to add to these pipelines. And basically, the directive was you would get at least 2 summers with them, and then you would hopefully be guaranteed a job at the end of that. So that, without question, if I did not get into Inroads, I wouldn't be where I am today. I got to be honest with you, because for me, it was the springboard, because it got me into the spaces that I never would have been in. My first job was at Goldman Sachs. Trust me, they weren't looking for a CUNY Baruch graduate.
Did they have a discount?
You know, I came into a situation where all of my peers, like if we're sitting in this room, I'm the one CUNY graduate. I got Harvard, I got Princeton, I got Yale, and I'm sitting there going, well, damn, I ain't got no student loans. Hey, hey, I'm good.
Our students graduate with very low student loans.
Okay.
So we really like that.
But I had to be comfortable moving in spaces where I wasn't, you know,
weren't like
yeah.
You want pinky out.
Exactly right. I wasn't. I had to learn a lot. I learned a lot during that time period. But I would not have and having Goldman Sachs on my resume, still till this day, says a lot about me and what I'm able and capable of doing. So get that experience. Definitely, I would say critical thinking skills are important. You have to be able, because a lot of what we do in terms of how we recruit talent is we do a lot of assessments in what we do. So we writers of content, producers of work. So written and oral communication skills are super important, but you have to be able to think thoughtfully about a problem and how you want to solve it. And so when I'm training my managers about, okay, we have these assessments, let's make sure we're thinking critically about how we're going to grade this, because how I perform on this is going to be different than someone who might have a classical, you know, career within this space, and neither one is better or wrong. They're different, and let's think thoughtfully about like what that difference can add to your team and your bench strength. So and also too, like I said, organizations are merging, they're acquiring, employees are being asked to do more. And the only way that you're going to be able to do that is if you're able to think critically about how to problem solve. So really work on that and amplify that in your interviews. And if you're getting internships and fellowships, try to ensure that you're having some exposure where you have to think critically about certain things. Take the lead on things. Step out of your comfort zone. You know what I mean? Like, I have an amazing, amazing team, and they're all different, and they're all wonderful in what they bring to the table, and they all think differently and they look at things differently, but that's what makes it work for us, because we're like this wonderful tapestry of different backgrounds and experiences, and it helps us like be number one at what we do. Like, we changed the way that people look at our function once we got there, because it was like, oh, this is how we run recruiting here. And I'm like, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So critical thinking skills, work communication skills, like here's where you get the practice. One thing that somebody said to me that I always took with me to this day when I was in college, they were like, go on interviews for jobs that you don't want. It's the practice. Okay? If you don't get the job, who cares? You don't want it anyway. Right? But you want to get comfortable and get your script together. There, to this day, I have my script when I go into an interview for a job. Here's what, and I'm on the train and I'm reading it. That's the same way I used to like pass tests in college. So you know what I mean? I have my index cards. What do you want to amplify? What do you want to highlight? So think thoughtfully about your brand, how you position yourself, and make sure that those are some skill sets that you're like honing in on through these internship and fellowship experiences.
Should have brought a pen and paper for that one. Take some of those notes for myself.
Wait until we ask her to
Yeah.
use it.
There you go. I'll say like again, everything she said was ideal, and internships I think are one of the most important things where you guys are right now, because you want to have a little bit experience going into your first job. But one thing or one skill I think is very imperative to kind of hone in now, I mentioned it earlier in my previous panel, was having a really good understanding of PowerPoint and Excel. When you get into the work world, that's basically all we use every single day. No matter what job, what opportunity, you have to at least understand how to do both of those to be successful. And if you're just a little bit advanced, like Excel, you know, pivot tables, like you know how to manipulate data, if you're in that world, you are far beyond than anyone else within the organization. So if you can craft and hone in those two skills, I think that's very imperative. And I guess the one thing that people don't have when they're going to their first job or an interviewing process, which you mentioned earlier, is the actual brand. Like, how many people like have Nike shoes here, or have purchased Nike shoes, or have Nike shoes at home, or gifted, or have Nike somewhere? So why'd you buy Nike? Because Nike's a really well-known brand. You know what it brings, $1 trillion opportunity. But a shoe's a shoe. Like, at the end of the day, they do the exact same thing. what you are individually is your brand. Like you are your own Nikes, your own Adidas, your own this, your own that. Because all of you can do the work. All you are very talented. All you can do the skills. Like those skills are your commodity. It's like who you are, what you do, and if people know actually what you do, what you're good at. That's what your brand is. So, like, who has a LinkedIn account here?
You should all have one.
Yes, you should all have one because that
It's
is
Thursday. Next Friday, you better have one.
exactly because when people start researching, when these amazing talent acquisitions individuals come to you, they look at first at your resume and then your LinkedIn. If you don't have a LinkedIn, they don't know what you do. And then with LinkedIn, you can promote what you're doing, the class you're taking, the projects you're working on. It's a part of building your brand and who you are because at the end of the day, anyone can do the job, but I know you can do this job because I've heard you did it and you're a rock star at it to a certain degree. But again, a little bit of advice I would have for my career thus far.
Thank you. And she's going to ask, do you have Apple Pay?
I probably will. I would definitely echo the thoughts of my fellow panelists here. I mean, the LinkedIn piece, your brand is huge, right? Just to kind of add one more thing that I feel like when I've been talking with candidates, whether it's at different internship panels or conferences and things like that, or it's at Black MBA or Hispanic MBA conferences, whatever it may be, the one thing that I've been looking for that I haven't seen as much as I would like to is something that I call learning agility. And that means that like you are constantly or you're trying to seek out new things or new ways of doing things or new skills and like new ways to challenge your brain of thinking, right? Because that's something that's super valuable as an employer that I'm like, oh, somebody that's eager to learn, somebody that's eager to try to take on new challenges and think outside of the box. I know that's kind of a cliche term, but the fact that you can articulate that and say like, hey, here, let me show you how I can demonstrate my learning agility. Let me tell you about these classes that I independently took on my own to try to enhance my skills. That to me says like, wow, this person is not, they don't want to be stagnant in their career. They want to continue to grow. They want to push the thinking that they're going to challenge the thinking that already exists, right? Because if you think about it, you got a bunch of old heads that you're going to come start working with, panelists included, right? Like, come teach us something new. Yeah, I know. I did. But really, it's like, come teach us something new because we don't know everything, right? So we want you to come and teach us something that we don't know because that's the beauty and diversity, right? It's the beauty of you coming in and you're challenging everything that we thought we knew that was right before. And you're like, hey, but have you thought about it this way? And say, hey, I took a class or I saw that, maybe not, I saw this on TikTok, but sometimes TikTok is very informative, to be fair. But you're constantly just thinking about, hey, did you think about it from this perspective? Or did you, especially when we're thinking about like the diversity inclusion space, right? Hey, are you sure that this messaging is going to land with XYZ type of people, right? I want to see that agility. I want to see that appetite and that thirst for knowledge because that's a key skill that I've been missing with some of the students that we've been talking to lately, and even some of the like experienced employees that have tried to interview for jobs too. So. Yeah.
Thank you, each of you, so very much. So we have time for 3 questions that you can direct. We have time for 3 questions that you can direct to your panelists before we have some closing comments. You should be aware these people who hire for a living are going to be doing resume reviews at 2:45 right down in the Black Box Theater Lounge. So you can print off your resume if you haven't already uploaded it, and you can bring it, and they will actually look at your resume and give you direct feedback on areas of strength and areas of growth. So I want to encourage you. I want you to text or DM your friends and let them know because we want to take advantage of the opportunities that we have here. It's not just them. I'm going to ask all our corporate partners in the room to raise your hand so they know that all of these good folks here came today just to sit with you one-on-one in order to go through your resume. The next session that we have is on networking. So they're going to teach you skills on how to connect with people as you go to these spaces. But before we do any of that, I want to take at least 3 questions before we wrap up for the afternoon. Who has a question? Okay, I'll bring you the mic.
Thank you. I was just wondering, how do you guys navigate the alienating work that might come from working in a corporate field? Just more so if you have a lot of overhead, right? And sometimes the work that you might be doing doesn't necessarily feel like you might agree with your overhead. So how do you guys navigate that kind of environment?
I can reframe it. So imagine the good people ask you to do something that is antithetical to your values, right? How do you manage that given that the production of private industry is to make money? And sometimes making money is antithetical to doing good or to the values that you have yourself. How do you negotiate that? How do you make space? And I think that's an important big John Jay question, because a part of the reason why some students are not attracted to the private sector is because the private sector is viewed as evil. And and the reputation that is often aligned is that it's viewed as white and man and evil, and anti-LGBTQ, anti-Black, anti-gay, anti-immigrant, etc. And you all are three, right, people of color in that world, that there might be instances where you see that the work is being done in a way that promotes inequity. What do you do if you can't quit?
No, it's a great question. And I guess it's a little hard for functionally what I do, but I think, well, first and foremost, I'm a very confident person and I have no problems pushing back. But I push back with solutions too as well. Like, you know what, I don't feel comfortable with X, but I think I would be comfortable if we took this approach, right? If it's something that I can be flexible with. If it's not something that I can be flexible with, then I'm going to communicate that, and then you will have to find somebody else to do it. So I try to, because principally at the end of the day, I go home with me. So if it's something that I don't feel comfortable doing or being a part of, that's going to sit with me way longer than the time it's going to take me to do the thing, right? So at the end of the day, I think you have to be comfortable in your own skin to really like stand on 10 toes as it relates to formulating your opinion on how you feel about not doing something or engaging in certain kind of work. I feel like corporate America has changed so much that there are safe spaces where people can amplify their rejection of a project, process, impact that someone is doing. Like we're content creators, we're reporters, right? So we have a certain level of ethical integrity that we must uphold, right? To ensure that this is, I mean, if you saw the settlement that just went down with Fox News, you understand why that's important, right? Mm-hmm. So that kind of stuff is important. And we have, a value system that we march towards. And we also have a safe space where people can report things. So you could do it, know your space. You can do it anonymously, or you can say, you know what, manager, this is not something that I feel comfortable doing under these circumstances or at all. So I really haven't had those challenges where I didn't feel comfortable pushing back. So I would say if you're someone who's not as comfortable doing that, start doing that now in your daily lives, right? So that you get that level of comfortability with who you are as a person. And as you're continuing to evolve and develop, I'm continuing to evolve and develop. I'm not the same person I was when I was in school. I've learned a lot via my experiences. But I also, too, try not to choose organizations that do work that I don't respect. So do your research and make sure that there's alignment with who you are as a person. There's certain editorial houses, I'll never take a job. I don't care how much you pay me. I'm not going to be embarrassed telling people I work. I've been in conferences. I went to a conference, Black National Association of NABJ, Black Journalists, and NAHJ. It was a combined event for Hispanic and Black journalists. So this was our audience, right? So people, early career starters, and people. I'm at Vox. And people would say, oh, are you at the other one? And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not. No, I am not. I'm proud of the brands that we represent. So I think it's important to align yourself with those organizations that at least initially, are going to be in alignment with what's important to you. And never, also too, I think this is important. It's okay to talk to more people as a part of the interview process. So if you want to just also too hear from some other folks on the team, ask that. And I think that shows a lot of discernment on your part, that you want to make sure that you're making an informed decision and you're trying to ensure that you're getting all the perspectives you need to make a valued decision so that you don't find yourself at odds with the organizations that you're joining.
I'm going to let you say the final word because, you know, we have a space constraint. So, well, actually, if you say a few sentences or Ariel say a few sentences, I will take your sentences because we're going to record.
Oh, sure. So, obviously, everything Patricia said is 100% like accurate. I 100% agree. There is an issue in which if you do speak up and the organization isn't as receptive to that speak up, there might possibly be some consequences, just being real at the end of the day. Some people don't want to hear your issues or hear the nuances of it. So you have to kind of understand and play the politics of like, well, if I do say something might be retroactively done with me. So understand the nuances of speaking up and speaking out, because you can also find other ways to speak, like anonymously, or find ways to get yourself outside the organization as well. So this is the consequence of possibly speaking up, because, you know, we're still living the real world still, unfortunately.
I will just say that, and I know this is going to bleed into a little bit of the networking session that you guys are going to listen to hopefully later on today, but your network is such a powerful tool to have. LinkedIn, I will tell you, whenever I'm looking for a job, I always start with LinkedIn first, not only to find the job, but find the people that I might know that work at that job. Right? Because, or work at that company, because I want to talk to them. And I remember Dr. Johnson Diaz, she said earlier, you know, it's like, find somebody that looks like you. There's usually somebody there. And again, you know, sometimes those people are cool, sometimes they're not. But I always go in with like an optimistic mind that like, hey, maybe somebody that looks like me. I remember there's one of my colleagues is here today. One of my first days at MasterCard, I saw her in the hallway and I was like, can we be friends? Like, can we be friends? And I was so happy to be her friend, because I'm like, I don't know anybody at this company. I knew people that worked there before, but I don't know anybody here. And we have been friends since that day. And so leverage your network. That's the power of LinkedIn. If you do not have one, you will find people that are like second and third degree connections away from you that can be really, really instrumental and helpful for you, so that if you are in a situation like that where the company's going in a direction that you don't agree with, or you're working on something that you don't agree with, they can be there to help you and guide you, because maybe they've been there longer, maybe they've experienced that. So use your network for sure.
We are so grateful and so sad that we are out of time and someone has to use this space. Students, thank you. Dr. Garfield, thank you. Faculty members in the room, we are grateful for you for bringing your students to this conversation, our corporate partners and our panelists, Ariel, Bryant, and Patricia. Thank you. As you know, John Jay's charge is to educate for justice and for our students to be fierce advocates for justice. The information you shared with us today really equips our students with the tools and the information they need, and we could not be more grateful. Thank you in advance for the internships and jobs. Have a great afternoon, everyone.